Well, the year is almost over and you're probably wondering, man, what kind of computer am I gonna be able to get next year? I mean, I want to Minecraft harder and League of more legendaries, I guess, and also probably run Crisis. Then, the new Assassin's Creed, the Farther Cries, the PC port of God of War. No, that's not coming. But you probably want a computer that's gonna run every game possible. Well, in that case, you can do it already with the hardware that's on the market. Anything that's on the market right now will pretty much let you build whatever kind of computer you want, so it'll be a bit future-proof as well. But let's say you're a bit of a nut. Let's say you don't want just a computer that will run anything that's available now in the market and in the next 3 years, but something that's going to be available in the next 5 years as well. I mean, after we all get murdered in the nuclear Armageddon. Well, in this show, I'm going to try and give you a bit of advice in terms of what you can expect to see next year and what would be the best banging PC you can build in 2019. Now, the reason I'm making this show now is that the Intel Architecture Day event just wrapped up. Details are coming in. And Intel announced a new architecture, Sunny Core. It's coming in 2019. It's gonna be for both the Xeon processors and for the desktop core processors. And it's going to bring better performance per clock, better power efficiency for general computing tasks, and will have acceleration for general purpose tasks like AI and cryptography. What has not been mentioned at all is if this is going to be built on 10 nanometer or not. As you may know, Intel has been working on the 10 nanometer process for many years. It was supposed to be released in 2016. It has not been released in 2016. Much like the 14 nanometer process was delayed by, I believe it was a year, because Intel had encountered problems. That's why Broadwell materialized as a single CPU on the PC, because by then, due to the delays, Skylake was already around. And Skylake is still around. We are still basically on Skylake's fourth edition, I guess. Sunny Cove is going to be a bit of a different architecture. It's going to have, well, more cache, I guess, and lower latency. So at least it'll be a different architecture, hopefully, and not just a refinement to Skylake. But if it's not built on 10 nanometer, it will not really shock anybody in terms of performance unless they pull the super rabbit out of the hat. And they probably could, because Intel now has Jim Killer on board. And if you don't know who Jim friggin' Killer is, he's one of the head architects of the Intel killers, the Athlon 64, the Ryzens, and he's on board with them now trying to recover from the mess that's been the constant delay of 10 nanometer that meant that the Cannon Lake series that was supposed to be released in 2016 probably will arrive in 2020, because we're now at Sunny Cove. Where's Cannon Lake? But specifically because they did not mention on what process these CPUs will be made, I can't really say much about their effective performance compared to the current offering that Intel has. Yes, it'll probably be a better chip, more efficient, faster, but by how much it'll be faster, more efficient, since it may be constructed on the same 14 nanometer plus X2 Midnight Carnival the Revenge process that we have currently for the Coffee Lake chips. Were it to go to 10 nanometer, then the increase in performance and efficiency would be very noticeable. If it's not, it's just going to be, it probably won't be worth an upgrade if you have a Coffee Lake or a Sky Lake or a Cabby Lake, because I forgot about that one where wasn't there one more between them? But anywho, the Intel chips will still perform well next year. That is undoubted. As to how many cores you're going to need, try and get as many physical ones as possible, especially if you're doing content creation. So let's say at least a 6-core Intel CPU. Hyper-threading is a bit of an issue right now because it does have some security problems that have been revealed during the past year. So Intel may not offer it. It already does not offer hyper-threading on its glued-together Xeon chips, the scalable ones, just pure cores. Still, 6 cores should be plenty for most of your gaming needs. But if you're doing content creation, an 8-core CPU will be really useful, or at least a 6-core, 6-threaded one. Also, one other very important thing announced by Intel at its architecture event is that it's going to make 3D packaging, as in they're gonna stack chips on top of each other to make more complicated and higher performance products. This probably won't come for the immediate future with the Sunny Cove thing. But what it basically means is that Intel is adopting chiplets. They actually call them chiplets. Compute chiplets, vision chiplets, all stacked together on a basic compute die that contains the I/O, similar to what AMD is doing, and put into a package and slapped together on a motherboard. But more importantly than that, at least more importantly than that for mere mortals, is that Intel is going to include Generation 11 graphics with its next CPUs. Gen 11 graphics will bring about double the performance compared to the 9th generation of Intel graphics. So that is double what pretty much anything in the Skylake lineup had in terms of GPU power integrated, which should bring it in line with something to make it kind of a really neat solution, especially if you want to use a coprocessor for encoding stuff. It's going to work especially well with Adobe, because Adobe really likes Intel for some reason, and it may work well for games as well. But most of all, it will have adaptive sync. They've confirmed that, they've announced that, they said that it will have adaptive sync. And now, if you're not familiar what adaptive sync is, it's FreeSync. It's the general term used for FreeSync. It's not going to be exactly FreeSync, because FreeSync is what AMD calls the setting that it enables in the driver, but it's going to be the same thing enabled in Intel's driver. Checkmate NVIDIA. But of course, if you're looking for CPUs in 2019, there is the elephant in the room called the Ryzen 3000. I know there's been a leak out there. I would love to believe that that is real. I would take it with a mountain of salt. But what can't be overlooked, overshadowed by rumors, is that Ryzen is working well, and the Zen 2 architecture is going to have significant improvements in pretty much all aspects possible. One of them is going to be memory latency, because now everything is a chiplet with equal access to all the memory, all the I/O, no core interconnect memory latency. Everything talks to everything else at the same speed. Now, is it going to be as fast as if the memory controller was on each individual core? Probably not, but without the additional latency that would have been from crosstalk, performance will be improved. And because it is built on 7nm on TSMC 7nm, it will run really efficiently. That will enable it to have better performance per clock, higher speeds, and generally better performance. I do really hope that we can hit 5 GHz on a Ryzen chip, because if we can, it's going to be amazing, especially because the chiplet design allows for a lot of cores on pretty much any platform. It's not impossible for us to see 16 cores on AM4, and it's actually going to be usable because of the chiplet design. The chiplet design means that everything, again, talks to the entire memory at the same time, the same speed. So having just 4 RAM slots with dual channel RAM will actually not be a massive hindrance. But more importantly, PCIe lanes. Intel made no real announcement about the platform that Sunny Cove is going to be based on. It will probably have PCI Express 4, but X570 is confirmed to have PCI Express 4. So Zen 2 is going to support PCI Express 4. That is also confirmed because of the Epic ROM thing. So that means that you're effectively getting double the PCI Express lanes that you have now on PCI Express 3. Now, why is this important? Well, it's not because your video card is going to eat up all the bandwidth. No. It's because you could cram in so many goddamn M.2 drives that you will probably not need to add a normal SSD drive unless you use it for storage or something that's not all that important. Storage is going to get a massive boost with this platform. And this is going to be out in June. There is no exact release date for Sunny Cove. It's late 2019, so it's going to be after Ryzen 3000. Next year, it's going to be amazing for CPUs. It's going to be absolutely fantastic if you want to upgrade and get a new CPU. You're actually going to need to get a new system altogether. But just think about it. You will probably have the opportunity to get 16 cores, 16 fast cores on a standard desktop platform with a motherboard that doesn't cost an arm, a leg, and somebody's kidneys. Not yours, because you kind of need them, let's face it. Now, in terms of RAM, prices are still going to be high. They may drop with about 10% over the course of next year, or at least at the beginning of in the first half of next year. It may drop by about 10%, which is still about 40% shy of what it should drop to go back to normalcy, or at least as close to normality as it's been since the hashtag not colluding, not conspiracy, not screwing everybody over to make profits began from Samsung, Micron, and Hynix, and I think there's one more. So getting more RAM, fast RAM, because Ryzen really loves fast RAM, is still going to be expensive, hella expensive. And games will require more RAM in the future, especially because maybe the next generation consoles will add more. They probably will add more, like 12 gigs maybe. But of course, the next gen consoles will also add new GPUs. And here's the bit that's a bit, well, fiddly. Intel's 2000 series has been a bit so far. The RTX 2060 that's going to be announced in a couple of weeks, I guess, or days. If that is priced competitively, then that may be the only actual RTX 2000 card worth buying. All of the other ones are way overpriced and don't really offer enough of a performance boost compared to the previous generation to actually make it worthwhile. The 2070, for example, we expected that to have the performance of a 1080 Ti. It did not. It was under it. And that expectation came from the fact that the last generations of both X70 cards always beat the Ti, the X80 Ti of the previous generation. That wasn't going to happen this time because, well, ray tracing was the focus. So far, there's only one game that uses it, only for some reflections. It looks nice, but it's not doing much. We're not even sure if the RTX 2060 will have ray tracing and tensor cores. If it doesn't, it may actually be cheap enough to be worth buying. Otherwise, you're going to be paying 1070 prices for 1070 performance, which is not ideal. However, these are 14 nanometer cards, launched at the tail end of the 14 nanometer age. In the beginning of next year, there won't be all that many new video cards released, but in the second half, we will probably see a new NVIDIA lineup with 7 nanometer. The pre-orders were great for this series, but they sort of drifted off into meh. You can probably think of it as a bit of an experimental stage, maybe not something meant for a long shelf life, since apart from the 2080 Ti, none of the new video cards bring noticeably better performance than the previous generation, and that 2080 Ti costs an arm, a leg, and your kidneys, plus everybody else's. That is not a sustainable product. However, a 7 nanometer version of it that is cheaper, okay, no, not cheaper, but much faster because it's 7 nanometer, that has the legs, that has shelf life. But that will only happen if AMD releases a 7 nanometer, at least a 7 nanometer Vega part. Vega had some rough edges, and I mean that literally. The packaging on some of the GPUs was so that the HBM to memory and the GPU itself, the die, they were not at the same level, like on a vertical axis, which led to worse thermal performance in some cases. And that's because AMD doesn't do its own packaging anymore. And I mean, actually putting the CPU, GPU, memory, all that themselves on a thing, that they outsource it to somebody else that still has factories. And they outsourced it to several companies, and one of them goofed. I actually think two of them. I think there are 3, and possibly 2 of them goofed. But anyway, even Vega as it was, shrunk to 7 nanometer, will be probably at the level of, I mean, the high end. The Vega 64 will probably get to the level of performance of 2080, not a Ti. Oh god, no, that's a monster. It will probably help if all the other stuff like rapid pack math and all the things that they said were going to be implemented in video games would actually have been implemented. And it would have helped a lot if the 590 that was just released was not a Polaris card. There's also the expectation of Navi showing up next year, but so far it's a bit sketchy on that aspect. I know there was a leak. The leak... it sounds promising, but I mean, it sounds like it would be amazing, but probably no. I wouldn't put it past AMD to call their new series the 3000 series just to mess with NVIDIA. They've done that to Intel with their chipsets. But in terms of video cards, AMD has a rough time. I mean, Raja's not there anymore. The Radiant Technologies group got turned into the division that makes GPUs for PlayStation, Xbox, and MacBooks. But let's say that Navi does come out. Navi is the fulfillment of the promise that Vega was, and at least has more efficiency, better stuff in it. I still don't believe it'll reach the performance of a 2080 Ti because that is a monster. That is a giant built out of hubris and bravado just to show the world that yes, they can. In the, mid-tier segment, the successor to the 480, there they could probably give similar performance to, I would say, a 1070 maybe. And that would be actually quite nice if the price isn't insane. And the prices won't be insane because the crypto market is dead. Nobody's buying hardware anymore. So the prices of video cards are actually going to be reasonable this time. Unless prices go up again because crypto comes back and is back with a vengeance and goes gaga and crazy. And well, personally, that'll actually be very useful for me because I have a bunch of crypto things that are now worthless, but will be worth something if they come back. So I could afford to buy the things at the inflated price. So it's basically a win-win for me, unless the wrong cryptos increase in value and then I'm left high and dry. So what would be the best banging system you could probably get next year at a reasonable price? Well, my bet would be on a Ryzen 6-core 12-thread in the 3000 series with whatever will replace the 480 as a video card or the I guess the 2060 or the successor to the 2060. That's the range you should be thinking of in terms of something you can buy and afford and enjoy and not regret that you bought it when they announced the next one. In terms of storage, well, M.2s are all the rage, which you're probably going to need because, well, games like Star Citizen require you to have a really fast SSD because we're getting into data sets that are so huge, so magnificently, amazingly complex that an old hard drive will not keep up anymore. Unless you're playing some 2D side-scrolling pixel art in the roguelike Metroidvania, in which case you'll probably be okay with a Pentium 2 and spinning Rust. Well, that would be it for what to expect in terms of hardware for next year. Hopefully 2019 won't start with the announcement that somebody found an absolutely amazing critical security flaw in x86 so that all the CPUs are now borked, and fixing them, getting them patched would mean like disabling something that reduced the performance by half. That would be really, really sucky. Like it sort of was this year. Goodbye, everybody.